Hi guys, welcome back to Bunny Brick Designs. So I decided I'm going to be working on the Sparkling Snowfall collection from Bargain Bead Box, and I wanted to wire wrap this pendant. It's got a crack where they drilled, and so I don't want to use the hole on this back side because I'm afraid it's gonna come apart. So I'm gonna wire wrap, and right now I've cut 3 wires. They're 20 gauge square silver color copper wire, and they're roughly about 11.5 inches long, about 11 inches, 11.5 inches. And I am going to wrap them and then wrap them up around the cabochon. And then I may do some more bead weaving and do some more fancy stuff. But first I want to get this wrapped. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to take some 24 gauge or 26 gauge, I think this is 26 gauge, silver color copper wire. And I'm going to start out, I'm going to pick up one of my wires. And then I am just going to wrap around it 3 times, okay? And so we're just going to make a little wrap that's going to go around the bottom of this pendant. So this is our first set of 3. And don't worry about this tail. We'll get that off here in a minute once we've gotten this done. Make sure your weaves are really close together. Don't know if you can see that or not. You want to make sure they're nice and tight. I'm going to pick up a second wire, and now make sure this is laying flat. Like a square wire, you want to make sure that your flat sides are together. And I'm going to wrap around the 2 wires twice. And then on the 3rd time, I'm going to come up in between wire 1 and 2. And I'm going to wrap around twice. Actually, I'm just going to wrap around once, just because that's fine. And I'm going to be underneath that second wire. So now I'm going to come up and I am going to bring my next wire in and wrap around the second wire that I brought in and the first wire, or the last wire I brought in. So we're just going up to trap that 3rd wire, and I'm going to do that another time and trap it. Now I've got 2 wraps there. Now I'm going to wrap around this 3rd wire once. And again, your weaving pattern can be anything you want it to be. So just because somebody says, oh, you have to do a minimum of this or that, it doesn't. It's whatever you want it to be. Now I'm going to go back between wires. Actually, I'm going to do 2 wraps around that base wire there. It's just so I have a little bit of a space. And again, you want to make sure you're pushing them up against each other and nice and tight. And now we'll flatten those out here in a minute once I'm done weaving. And so I'm going to go around these wires twice. Because again, I'm just getting a set. Now I'm going to come in between the second and 3rd wire, and I'm going to wrap around the 2nd and the 1st wire twice. So there's 1, there's 2 wraps, as you can see. Don't worry so much about this side. Now I'm going to wrap 3 times around this base wire. So there's 1, 2, and 3. So now my weaving wire is still attached to my spool, just so I can save on weaving wire. I'm going to push those really close to each other. And actually, before I go between those wires, I'm just going to pull this down because I'm going to want to start going back up. So now I've got 1 set of wraps, and my wires are connected. And even if they're not perfectly even, that's fine. Before you tighten those, you may want to just kind of move your wires, make sure they're even. Just trying to make sure that they're even here because I've got a long wire there, which is this shorter one there. And again, you just want to kind of try to even them out. And again, it doesn't have to be completely dead center because we are going to be cutting some of this off. All right, so now I've got my first set. I am going to do this pattern one more time. So I've wrapped 3 around the base wire. I'm going to come up between 2 and 3. Oops, if I can get between 2 and 3. And I'm going to wrap twice around 1 and 2. And then I am going to come up, wrap around just 2 once. And I'm doing that just to secure that wire really well. And I don't need to do a ton of wrapping at this point. Would help if I had the right wire. There we go. And then I'm going to wrap around 2 and 3. There's 1. There's 2. And then I'm going to wrap around 3rd wire twice. And then we are going to repeat going back down. And I'm going to end off with 3 wraps around the bottom wire. So there's the coming up between 2 and 3. So there's my wrap around 1 and 2. There's my second wrap around 1 and 2. And now I'm going to wrap around this base wire once, 2, 3. And that will get me what I need. And I'm going to come up and do it once more, just because I'm going to be finishing it off. And so what I want to do is I want to smush all this together and make sure it's super close. And then I'm going to give the weave just a little bit of a tap with the pliers just to kind of lock it into place and make sure that it's nice and tight. Now, to get the weaving wire to undo, just kind of wiggle it a little bit here and it just comes right off. And there's no rough edge anywhere. Just make sure when you're doing it in between 2 wires, and you can use your pliers if you think, you can't get a good grip. Nice circular motion. And that actually broke off a little higher than I would have liked. So we're going to do that again. And there you go. Now, no nicks, no sticking out ends, because it's actually broken off in between these 2 wires. So now that we've got that and we're nice and tight, and this isn't quite in the center, which is fine. We're going to take this and we are going to bend it gently around our cabochon. Now I'm going to set this on the table and try to do this so that it fits nicely around there. So like I just started it around that cabochon. Pick it up, hold it if you have to. Just kind of bend it. And as you can see, we've got plenty of wire there. So I'm just trying to form it in a nice round shape. Try to keep your wires as straight as possible when you're bending them. You want them side by side. And so we've got the nice shape. And so what I need to do is I need to figure out where they're going to cross once it's tight. And then I'm going to need to put a kink in it in the opposite direction. So this is going to come there. And I'm just going to bend it up right there. And then I'm going to take my other side and fold it up. And now this is a little harder to do if you're, and there we go. We want that as tight as we can get it, but we don't want, so there, it's going to it will trap your cabochon in. So now I've got my bend, and I'm just going to put a nice bend in it there. I've got my bend, I've got my loop. So this will fit in there quite nicely. I'm going to take, and keeping your wires in line together. So you want your 3 wires on this side to be flat and your 3 wires on this side to be flat. Now, if you have to, bend these, smooth them out a little bit, get them so they line up. And then just smooth them out. We will be wrapping them. And it doesn't have to be perfect right here. As you can see, this curve is a little bit it's not as, there we go. Just adjust it as you need it. It likes to be fiddly at this stage, but that's fine. So now I'm going to take some of my weaving wire, and I am just going to start weaving, or just wrapping these wires together. Now I'm going to start by wrapping it around 3 wires on one side a couple of times, just to kind of get the wire started. Nobody's going to see that because it's going to be covered by everything else that's there. And so now I've got these 3 wires. They're even. Those wires are even. I'm going to start wrapping and trying to keep them pinched. So you may need to adjust hands, whatever is going to be easiest for you to keep these wires together. And I'm just going to start wrapping. And I'm going to do 5 or 6 wraps. This is just to get it secured, and keep these wires together like that. So that's all I'm going to do. I think I did like 7 or 8. Push those down. I'm going to leave my weaving wire attached. Again, I'm going to pull this guy off. And I'm going to trim him, actually, because he's kind of loose there. Just going to trim that. Tuck that in. Give that a good pinch. So now your wires should be all lined up, and while they're a little bit crisscrossing, that's fine. I'm going to put my cabochon in. And this is where it's going to get a little fiddly because you've got to get it in, but it's not going to be staying in at this point. Your wires, it's just going to pop in and out through the back. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take one set of wires, and I'm going to call this one the back. You're going to pull up just the first wire, right? So just this first wire, I'm going to pull it up away from the other wires, and I'm just going to turn it in just a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing with this side, just turn it in just a bit. Try to get them as even as possible if you can. Because what that's going to do is that's going to get a spot for your cabochon to sit. So then I'm going to pop the cabochon in. Okay, and I'm going to lift up the top wire up around just a little bit. Now I'm going to use my fingers for this because I want this kind of uniform and straight around the wire, around the cabochon. I don't want to see this little bend here because we are going to be doing something kind of fancy along the side. And so that's not going to go anywhere. That's in there really secure, really stable. So you don't have to worry about that going anywhere at this point. So now we've got our cabochon set. And you could finish it off like this, take these, cut off all these wires, make a bail, and be done with it. And that would be a pretty pendant. But what I want to do is I'm going to take wires, the 2 front wires, which are these 2. I'm going to bring those up to the front, and then I'm going to find the wires on either side and kind of separate those out like that. I'm going to then take my weaving wire, making sure I keep these wires as straight as possible. And if they start to turn, just try to get them as straight as you can. And I'm just going to wrap around the 2 wires for little ways, making just to get around the curve. And then I may do a fun weave. I think I'm going to do a 2-2 weave. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 around 1 wire and getting it pushed down in as far as I can push it. And if you can't get your pliers in there, if you can get some nails in, fingernails work great. Then I'm going to go around both wires twice. Okay. And then I am going to go around the other wire twice. So it's going to be almost like a zigzag weave around both wires. And then around this wire. And I have a kink in my wire, so try to avoid this if at all possible. Sometimes you can get these kinks out with pliers by just twisting it like that. Other times you can't. I'm going to cut off a piece of wire because I think that's why it's getting twisted, is on the spool. So, and again, you can try these different weaves, see what you like. You may not like this 2-2 weave. You may want to do something else. I wanted to do this just because I want to give it a little structure and allow it to be a little bit wider so that I have a little bit of a bail there, because this is going to be my bail. And while I know this doesn't look neat, when we tap it down, it will look much better. It always looks better once it's tapped down with a pair of pliers. For some reason, that neatens it up. So I'm just going to finish this up and I will be right back. Okay, guys, so I decided to go with a figure 8 weave instead, just because the weave that I was doing there was too many gaps in it, and I wanted it to be a little more sturdy. So I've gotten my wires done, and I finished off with 3 wraps. I'm going to do 1 more and see if I can just get that nice and tight. Cut that off. Make sure I have no sticking out ends. And then I'm just going to push this down and try to get it as tight as I can possibly get it there. So now I've got my bail somewhat made. I'm going to bring it forward. I'm going to grab my bail making pliers. And I want a fairly large loop on this, so I'm going to go with the 4th step. And I'm going to get it as close as I can. Do I want the 3rd step? Yeah, we'll do the 4th one. Yes, 3rd one, 4th one. No, 3rd one. And we're just going to wrap it around the bail making pliers. until it comes to the back. And I'm going to bend this up so that when I put it back down, it is now a nice round loop, and I've got these 2 wires here. Now, I cut the wires off, and that's fine. I'm going to secure these to this loop with just some wires. So I'm going to start, and I could have left that on there. It probably would have been fine. I tend to cut things off and then realize I need them. So if you do that, try not to do that, but I do at times, just not thinking. And so I'm just going to wrap around the front. Now you want to make sure the front stays nice and smooth and as much as possible, but I'm just trying to secure these 2 wires to the front of the frame. And again, most of this is going to be hidden anyways by, and there's a loop in there. There we go. We'll just tuck that down. And I'm just going to go around a few times just to wrap that in and make it nice and secure. And then I'm going to come around back and just wrap it around those 2 wires a couple of times. And I am going to come up between the 2 wires, and I'm going to do my wiggle and pull technique, and it's going to come right off. Now I'm just going to tap these down so that it's a little bit neater. And again, I can do the same thing on this one. Pull and get that off. And that didn't come all the way off, so I'm just going to trim that and tuck that in so that there are no sharp ends. And I still feel a sharp end there, but again, that may be covered. So now I've got these 2 wires on the back and these 2 wires on the front. Now, some of them are longer than others. I do want to cover up this hole. So I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to curve this wire and make a loop right here along the side, up along the bail, and then I'm just going to allow this to come and curve around the back. And again, we will tuck that in under those wires and fasten it off. I'm going to take this guy, I'm going to follow a similar pattern, except instead of doing the loop the same way, I'm going to loop it around in the other direction. Okay? And then bring him down around the back as well. Now we're going to need to finish those, we're going to need to put those off and tie them off, and I will show you how to do that. First, I'm going to bring this guy out and this guy out because I'm going to want to do something with those. So in order to finish these off, I'm going to lift up this wire here, and it may be a little fiddly, and then I'm going to take this wire, this first wire, and I'm going to tuck it underneath, and I'm going to trim this guy a little bit here because we don't need all of that, and I'm going to tuck him underneath this wire as well. And we're just going to wrap him around the wire, making sure that the end is sticking in toward the stone and there's no sharp edges. Now I'm going to do the same thing with this wire. I'm just going to wrap him around, and he's a little bit long, so we're going to cut him as well. And then just wrap that around the frame, tucking in the edge. so that there are no sharp points. So now those two wires are secured. Now I still have these two wires, and while I've got something coming out here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this loop here, and I'm going to use some wire, and I'm going to wire on a little silver bead over that. So now for these wires, I want to make something I want to make it symmetrical, but I do want to come down. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this longer wire, and I'm going to make a nice curve there. And then I'm just going to curve it using my thumbnail and make a nice loop right there. And I am going to curve this back down around here. And so I'm going to end up probably wiring these two together so this stays there. And when I do the curve, I'm going to wire that as well. So now this one, I want to mirror this curve, but I think I want to bring him over and just bring him, do I want him under or do I want him, so we've got that there and that's going to curve there. All right, let me get this guy secured first. Just because I want to make sure this guy is down. I'm going to trim a little bit off because I want him secured to the frame right here. I'm going to lift up on this guy and secure him while holding on to where I want it placed. I'm just going to secure him right underneath this wire to the back of the frame right there. Okay, so now that's in place. That's not going anywhere. Now this guy, I think I want to bring him over here and wrap him around back here. I don't really want to do much with that, just making a curve. So I am going to cut that off right there and have wires go flying. And I am going to lift up on these just a little bit more because I'm going to tuck him right in that curve, or right in the open space right there underneath the bail. Now I still have these two wires, and I can bring this around and I can curve him down around back here. And I think I'm going to bring this guy right along with him and curve both of those along back. And we will finish those off back here by tucking them to the frame. And I don't need all of that, so I am going to cut a little bit off here. And we're going to be tucking them to this part of the frame. So I'm going to lift up on the frame a little bit, and I don't need that much on that one as well. So I'm just going to even these guys up. And I'm going to curl them. So I'm just going to lift them up, make a curl. Lift them up, make another curl, just because I'm trying to make a C shape so that I can literally just tuck them underneath that wire. And lifting up the wire, trying not to scratch your stone, and just curling them underneath like that. And I need a smaller pair of pliers here because apparently this guy just does not want to curl the way I need him to. And again, don't be afraid to lift up on your wire, because we can always pull that back down when we're done. There we go. There. All right, so now I've got everything in, and I've got my pendant wire wrapped, and it's asymmetrical, and I'm going to attach, I'm going to take a very small piece of wire here, and I am just going to go underneath, and you may have to lift up a little bit on the wires to get that, just a hair like that, just so I have a little bit of room in there to wrap it. And so I am just going to come in and I'm going to wrap this maybe 3 times just to make it so that it's secure. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now we've got that nice and secured. That's not going to go anywhere. Give that a nice squeeze. Get those even. Now you could wrap it. I could put a bead in there if I wanted to. I'm not sure I want to, but let's see what that would look like with a silver bead. And I've got different size silver round beads here. So I'm going to grab a few sizes and see if we want to put a bead in there. Do we want to put a bead? I know we want one there. So let's see about putting a bead in that. And is that one too small? I think those are too small. Those are about the same size. Let's go with that size maybe. Yes. So we could do that. That's a little bit too big. I think the smaller one will look better. Now we're going to add some more stuff to this. I think I'm going to add some beads, potentially. Do I like that there? No, I don't like that there. So we're just going to finish that off. And so I'm just trimming my ends and then going to take my pliers and tuck that in. Now again, I want to cover that hole, so I am going to take a piece of wire and I am going to wire on a bead into that right there. So one of the things I want to do here is I want to make sure this is centered. So I'm going to just adjust this just a hair so that it's centered over that bead, or centered over the hole. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to do a little trick to get that so it stays in. I'm going to wire it through the hole. And then we're going to add some more beads. And so when you wire it, I don't want the whole of the bead showing. So I'm going to lift it up, open up my wire just a hair so that it's wide on a spot. Get my bead so it's flat. And then I'm going to just gently pull the wires until that bead and if you have to, give your bead, I'm just going to give it a twist and pull it through so that now my bead is in there. And now I've got these wires and I can add more beads. And I think I'm going to add some beads to come in along here and maybe tie off, you know, just maybe a little bit of small beads here. Just to give it a little bit of graduated. So we're going to put a bead there. We're going to do 2, 3, and I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do 5 to come around this. There we go, 5. And then I am just going to tuck it underneath these 2 wires here, come around those 2 wires a couple of times, which is also going to secure those wires. If I can get it underneath this frame piece, it will secure it to the frame. There we go. And that's 3. And that's nice and secured to the frame. Pull that nice and tight. Get that as close to the top as possible. And then I'm going to snip that off. Because again, I just didn't want a single bead there. So we've got that bead, those beads there. And now this wire, I am just going to snip off and wrap around the bail a couple of times here, because nobody is really going to see that. You can wrap it around the bail, or actually I'm going to wrap it right in here. It's going to come down through. There's 1. And I'm going to need my pliers because that's small. And trying to find a hole to get it into. There we go. That is going, where did that go? Aha. There it is. There we go. All right, so now that's really secure. That's not going anywhere. I'm going to trim that as close as I can to where it's coming out. Tuck in that end. And there we go. So we have wrapped the cabochon, and we have our bead here, 5 beads there, and a nice fun focal for a necklace. So that's the way what you can do, and I'm going to give you a close-up here. Let me just put these beads away, and I'll give you a close-up. So this is what you can do if you have a stone, like I did, that has a crack where the hole is. I didn't want to take the chance that that would break if I put like a bail on it or did something where it would fall apart. So I wire wrapped it, and I think that's gorgeous. And so here's going to be a quick close-up. And, you know, it's in there secure. It's not going anywhere. It's got a nice bail on it. Nice silver, so it's going to go well with the beads. I think I'm going to do possibly some of these stone beads with it and make myself a nice pendant. Anyways, that's all for tonight. I'm going to clean up this mess, and I may do another one tonight, I may not, but we'll finish up the necklace with the sparkling snowfall in the next one. So thanks for watching.